Single dad sells his watch to feed daughter buyer is a billionaire who recognizes him on a freezing Thursday evening. Daniel Hayes stood outside a quiet pawn shop in the heart of Chicago, clutching a small velvet box. Inside was his late father's watch, Shan, elegant silver, Omega, worn but timeless. It was the only valuable thing Daniel had left. He looked down at his daughter, Lily, barely 7, huddled in his oversized coat. Her cheeks were red, and her eyes filled with trust. "We'll get some dinner after this, okay, Bug?" he whispered. Lily nodded, trying to smile. Inside the shop, the owner barely looked up as Daniel placed the watch on the glass counter. "How much you want?" the owner asked. "I just need enough to get food for the week. Maybe a little for rent," Daniel replied softly. The door chimed behind them. A tall woman in a white cashmere coat walked in. Her heels echoed on the floor as she browsed the shelves, but her gaze subtly drifted toward the counter. The shopkeeper examined the watch lazily. "Worn out. I'll give you 50 for it." Daniel's heart dropped. "This is a classic Omega worth 50. Take it or leave it." Before Daniel could reply, the woman's voice rang out. "I'll give you 10,000 for it," she said, stepping forward. The shopkeeper blinked. "Excuse me?" Daniel turned around, confused. The woman had removed her sunglasses, revealing sharp green eyes and a familiar face he couldn't quite place. "Are you serious?" he asked. "I'm very serious," she said, pulling out a sleek black checkbook. "But only if you sell it directly to me, outside this place." Daniel hesitated, then nodded slowly and followed her outside with Lily, in the cold air. The woman turned to him. "You don't remember me, do you?" "I'm sorry," Daniel said, trying to place her. "I don't." "You were my instructor," she said, smiling. "At Evergreen Youth Center, 10 years ago, you taught self-defense to underprivileged girls. You saved my life in more ways than one." Daniel blinked. It came rushing back. Her name was Grace. Back then she'd been quiet, withdrawn, but bright, full of potential. "I remember now," he said. "Grace Templeton. Templeton right now," she added. "I run a tech firm. I owe everything to you. You used to bring extra sandwiches when I couldn't afford lunch. I never forgot that." She looked down at Lily. "This is your daughter." Daniel nodded, unsure what to say. "I can help," Grace said simply. "Not as charity, as repayment." "Grace, I don't. Let me finish," she said. "You changed the direction of my life when no one else saw me. Let me do the same for Lily. Come work for me. I'm opening a community outreach division. You'd be perfect for it. Full benefits, housing stipend, school support." Daniel's lips parted in disbelief. Grace handed him the check anyway for 10,000. "Whether you say yes or not, take this. For Lily." He stared at the check, then at her. "I don't know what to say." "Say yes," she said. "Let's feed your daughter. Then let's change the world together." 1 year later, Daniel walked into his new office director of outreach for Templeton Wright Foundation. Photos of community events lined the walls. Lily's laughter echoed down the hallway. She was enrolled in one of the best private schools in the city, now in full scholarship. On his desk sat his father's watch. Grace had returned it to him as a Christmas gift, fully restored. He'd sold the watch in desperation, but what he got in return was a second chance. That same evening, Grace invited Daniel and Lily to dinner, not at a 5-star restaurant, but at a quiet family diner near her company's headquarters. "I figured this would feel more comfortable," she said, sliding into a booth with them. "You always said real people eat where they don't need reservations." Daniel chuckled. "I can't believe you remembered that." "I remember everything you ever said in that old gym," she replied, looking at Lily. "You were the first adult who ever treated me like I had value." Lily sipped her hot cocoa as Grace chatted with her like an old friend. Daniel watched, a lump forming in his throat. He'd spent years scraping by doing odd jobs, night shifts, sleeping in shelters when rent failed, but this moment felt like light after a long tunnel. "You didn't just feed me," Grace said gently. "You taught me to fight. You taught me I mattered." Daniel blinked hard. "I never thought I made much of a difference. You made all the difference." The next morning, Daniel visited Grace's company. The lobby was massive glass walls, greenery, a children's play area near reception. Every employee who passed by smiled warmly. Grace led him to a spacious conference room with floor-to-ceiling windows and laid a thick folder in front of him. "Here's the outreach division plan," she said. "I want to build shelters, educational programs, and food banks. But not with just money, real people guiding the vision. People like you." Daniel turned the pages. "This is ... incredible. There's a starting salary of $95,000, full benefits, housing stipend. You can pick from 3 apartments in safe neighborhoods. We've already pre-approved you." He blinked in disbelief. Grace, I'm just a guy who tried to do the right thing. I'm not qualified to run a program like this." "Are exactly who should run it," she said. "You lived it. You understand." 3 days later, Daniel and Lily stood in the living room of their new apartment. Hardwood floors, warm lighting, 2 bedrooms, a stocked fridge, a teddy bear with a note that read, "For Lily, from Auntie Grace." Lily darted from room to room, squealing, "Daddy, we have our own bathtub." Daniel leaned against the doorway, hand over his mouth. The last time they had a bathtub, he'd lost his job the same week. Later that night, Lily curled up next to him and whispered, "Is this forever?" He kissed her forehead. "It's the beginning of forever." Weeks later, Daniel stood at the front of a packed gym once, the same place he taught Grace. Now, it bore a new sign, Hayes Community Center, sponsored by Templeton Wright Foundation. He gave a short speech. "Nervous, humble. In this very room, I met a girl who didn't speak much. She had bruises inside and out. I didn't know it at the time, but that girl would one day become the reason my daughter sleeps in a warm bed. That girl is Grace Templeton Wright." Applause. Grace stood near the back, blinking away tears. Daniel smiled. "People say, giving changes lives. But so does remembering. She remembered me. And now, we remember each other by changing lives together." Months passed. Daniel became the face of the outreach division, appearing in interviews, starting mentorship programs. One Christmas morning, a small box arrived on his desk. Inside, his father's watch. Restored to perfection, engraved on the back were the words, "You gave time. Now it's giving back." GTW. Daniel slipped the watch onto his wrist, heart full. He'd once sold it to feed his daughter. Now, that same watch ticked forward, marking the time of a new life, a second chance, and a friendship born in the ashes of struggle. And it all started with a desperate man, a tiny act of kindness, and a billionaire who never forgot. It wasn't long before Grace invited Daniel to attend a board meeting of the Templeton Wright Foundation. The room was filled with executives in suits, corporate advisors, and philanthropic strategists. Daniel wore his best thrift store blazer, trying to mask his discomfort. He felt out of place until Grace stood and introduced him. "This," she said firmly, "is Daniel Hayes. He won't tell you he once fed a dozen hungry kids out of his own pocket, or that he built a self-defense program from scratch with no budget. But I will. He's lived every inch of the mission we claim to stand for. He's not just our new director of outreach. He's our compass." Daniel received a standing ovation that day. One of the board members even came up afterward and said, "You're the kind of person money can't buy, and that's what this place needs." Despite the new life, not everything was easy. One day, as Daniel left work, he passed a man on the sidewalk, disheveled, cold, asking for change. Something about him looked familiar. Daniel paused, studied the man's face, and gasped. "Eddie." The man looked up. "Dan." Eddie was an old friend from Daniel's past once, a coworker, then a roommate, till drugs and bad luck sent him spiraling. Daniel had tried to help once, years ago, before life forced him to focus on Lily alone. "I thought you were gone," Eddie said, ashamed. Daniel crouched beside him. "No one's gone, man, just lost. Come on, you're coming with me." He brought Eddie to one of the shelters the foundation funded. Grace didn't ask questions, she simply nodded. "We don't leave people behind." That night, Daniel sat on his apartment balcony, looking out at the skyline with Lily sleeping inside. He realized he wasn't just surviving anymore, he was lifting others. And this time, he had the power to do more than hope. Months later, Lily's school had a writing assignment, "Someone who inspires me." Daniel found her letter tucked in his briefcase one morning. "My daddy is my hero. He used to cry when I didn't see, but I knew he was trying. Now he smiles more. He helps other people smile too. A lady named Miss Grace gave him a job, but really, he always had one. His job is to be kind, even when it's hard. I want to be like him when I grow up." Lily Hayes, age 7, Daniel sat in his office, tears rolling down his face. The staff passed by without interrupting. They all knew, this man didn't lead with money or degrees, he led with heart. That winter, Templeton Wright hosted their annual gala. Guests in tuxedos mingled, chandeliers sparkled, and cameras flashed. Grace stood on stage beside Daniel, who wore a tailored black suit, still modest, still Daniel.